we're all thinking about the war. No. Al-Qaeda is being funded and allowed to operate and has now been resuscitated. They finally got rid of that Frankenstein and then only created 1,000 more. And then they do things like torture Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And that's back in the news today. And people are like, well, what? You're not for torturing Al-Qaeda? They get us to give up our morals because Jack Bauer tortures people for a decade every night on 24. And it's always to, save everybody, of course. It always turns out to be good to torture. Meanwhile, it turns out that the people they would torture from Al-Qaeda have been basically double agents, and that they didn't want the public to ever learn about that, and they wanted them to confess. So they even confessed to bombing buildings that weren't even built when he was arrested. He was waterboarded for, 5 years off and on? Then they threatened to torture his son. There's the headline: CIA tortured al-Qaeda suspects close to the point of death by drowning them in water-filled baths. That's in the London Telegraph today. Well, that's old news. Back when they thought they could sell the idea, that was the corruption of America, they would admit on television that, well, we've taken the gloves off. We're working on the dark side. We're torturing these people. When all they were doing was torturing people that knew too much, or torturing people they needed to then confess so they could sell a fake narrative of 9/11. We attacked Iraq when 15 of the hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. So see how easy it is to understand what happened on 9/11 13 years later this Thursday, when we see Al-Qaeda openly armed in Syria for 4 years. They were the only major fighting force. It's Saudi Arabia. It's jihadi. They want to kill the Shiite Alawite government, Christian coalition government. They want to go in there and kill everyone. I mean, the inner Muslim fighting is 10 times even the dislike of Israel or Christians. It is so intense. And who's the main driver? The radical Shiites in Saudi Arabia, the radical Sunnis in Saudi Arabia, who are dedicated to hunting down even moderate Shiites and killing them. And because this is somewhat of a complex issue, the public can't grasp it, and the government and the system knows it. I just mixed the two up, trying to describe it. If American men knew as much about the world and religions and geopolitical systems as they knew about the defensive line of the Dallas Cowboys or the UT Longhorns or the LSU Tigers, we would be in a free country and the system couldn't get away with this. But it thinks we're so dumb that it's even come out that in Iraq, in Turkey, in northern Israel, in Jordan, in Qatar, our government, the British government, the French government, our commandos trained and armed the cadres to then go create brigades after brigades, more than 40 brigades. Some estimates are that high, of Al-Qaeda, to then have them organize and invade Syria and now turn back around and invade Iraq to create that new Al-Qaeda-sponsored base. And they only bomb them when the public learns about it. And some of the media is hyping it to promote the war on terror, so Obama is forced to do some limited bombing to make it look like they're trying to stop them. So even the political system can't coordinate its lies. Meanwhile, our military has been freaking out for several years, exposing this, saying we don't want to arm these people. They're going to end up attacking the United States. This is immoral to turn these countries over with Christians in them and to let these murdering animals run around and blow up every mosque and church that isn't part of their system and crucify and chop the heads off of even children. So the reason I harp on this so much is that if this ever gets out, which is starting to, it's already gotten out in our military because they've been fighting these people, so they know the players. They understand the names and the region and the history. So the military is awake by the prima facie fact that they have been to these places. They have fought these people. They know what these flags mean. They know who these people are. So the military is just freaking out right now, giving arms, weapons, impads to these folks. And now the facade is collapsing. And I don't know what the establishment is going to do, because as it comes out that Al-Qaeda, IS, is being run out of Washington, D.C., and run out of NATO headquarters in Europe, as that comes out, and that Israel is working with them, that's come out in the Israeli papers. As all of that comes out, we're all having a moral debate now. Are we going to openly support Al-Qaeda? Are we going to openly be this evil and to sow this type of discord and mass murder? Because if we don't speak out against it, if we don't say no to it, we're part of it. So now Rand Paul has come out and said that he supports airstrikes on ISIS. And I, in spirit, agree with that, but you can't come out and say that without pointing out that our government helped arm them, which Rand Paul did as well. And that's why I support what he's saying. If we repent of this, if we have an open discussion of it, if we admit it, and then destroy it, that would be this country taking a moral course. But they don't want to do that. They're going to let ISIS, known as Al-Qaeda in Iraq previously, take over the entire Middle East, Africa, you name it. There is a global offensive being launched by radical Sunni Islamicists in Central Africa, Western Africa, Northern Africa, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Central Asia, in Pakistan, all over the world. And that's why I've said I expect ISIS attacks to happen in Europe or to happen in the Middle East using impads, shooting down aircraft. Unless we make it a big issue, then the politicos will try to actually use the intelligence agencies to stop them. But if we just let them attack and don't expose the establishment, they'll spin it and use that to take our liberties. We can use the enemy's propaganda push with Al-Qaeda, known as ISIS, against them, saying you're behind it, you're involved, you're going to let them attack, our borders are open, so that A, we can put pressure on securing the borders, but B, force the system to roll up Al-Qaeda. See, it's all how the media spins it. But ISIS is committing so many horrible atrocities, it's backfiring. And there are some people in the power structure that do want to take them out. So you're seeing some propaganda that is pushing for striking them. If you want to strike ISIS, you'd need to remove the Saudi Arabian government, who is behind all this to a great extent. It's the main engine of it, but then you're back to British intelligence. The globalists have controlled the mainstream media for a long time, but now they're expanding, making the weaponization even more vicious and deceptive. All the major networks are state-run.
We are partnering this year with the NFL.
The NFL has become a political weapon against the Second Amendment and pushes Obamacare. MSNBC tells us that our children belong to the state.
We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities.
The brainwashing media machine has been turned up on high, and it's time for humanity to double down on the true people's media and strike back against the tyrants that are destroying our civilization with their lies and fraud. We are the resistance. You are the resistance. You are the info war. It is more important than ever to realize that we are not the alternative media. We are the true media. The establishment dinosaur press is dying.
We are in an information war, and we are losing that war.
Join us at InfoWarsNews.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. Members can share their memberships with up to 11 people. By subscribing, you will literally be buying war bonds in the info war to expand our operation in the face of the tyrants. Join us at PrisonPlanet.tv.